Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of wild snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down Underhive.
Howdy Hive Scum and welcome back. Necromunda is sometimes a little bit convoluted and a little bit overcomplicated, and some of the rules are fairly ambiguous. So the term house rules is something that most gaming groups in modern Necromunda do have to put into their campaigns through their arbitrators. So what I've done is I've asked the question, what are some of the communities or your favorite house rules that you've got in your gaming groups, and I asked you to submit them on social media. Some people emailed them in, some people put them on Reddit, and I'm going to go through some of my favorites here and discuss them and sort of give you some information and some ideas on some house rules that you can use in your campaigns of Necromunda. Okay, so over on Reddit, we have Rain Throwaway 777, big name there. Fully painted models start the campaign with 1 XP. This is great, it's nice. I do feel that Necromunda doesn't have enough XP in it generally, and I do something very similar in my campaigns in that every single fighter that finishes a game comes with an extra D6 XP at the end of the game. It's a really nice way of balancing the amount of XP that you get and thus having more skills in your games of Necromunda, making them more fun. But XP for having fully painted gangs is definitely something that I would recommend, and this is a really good idea. It incentivizes your players to get more into the narrative and put their gangs on the table with nice colors and fitting into the grimdark style of Necromunda. I would even go further than that myself and say making a backstory about your gang. Just a paragraph or two explaining their background and their lore would give you some extra rep as well. This is also a nice way to do it too, as well as an MVP idea, which is something that you could do as well. At the end of a game, you could nominate one of your opponent's fighters to give them some extra XP or rep as well. Getting into some nitty-gritty ones here, we've got Bricky Phone. Plasma guns only get +1 to hit at short range. Yeah, I can see that being a thing. I think +2 at short range is too much, honestly, especially when you consider the types of fighters that are usually toting plasma guns. They've usually got very high ballistic skill as well. Most weapons are +1 to hit at short range, so why not? This is an okay house rule, and when a plasma gun is so sort of undercosted anyway, I would say either you do something like this or you just cost it higher at, say, 150 credits or something instead. This is a great idea and something that I would like to use as well, because I have some clumsy players that I've played with who knock over my terrain all the time. And it's really annoying when you've painted up your terrain to look really nice and someone just keeps knocking it over or rolling dice or just bashing stuff. So for those clumsy players, if you're knocking something onto your miniatures, I think if you're knocking a container or something like that down, there should be some damage or something that incentivizes being a bit more careful with people's terrain, because if you've lovingly crafted it and you've put lots of time into painting something and people are just kind of damaging it all the time, that can be pretty annoying actually. And this is a fun way of sort of making people more aware about the table and sort of being a little bit softer with things as well. Perhaps if you knock over a barrel or a crate or something like that, fighters nearby take a blast injury or something like that. A blast template gets put down and they get injured from it or something. That's quite a nice idea, so I really like that one. This one I've seen suggested a little bit as well. Change the infiltrate skill to be a free double move before the game. Start things like Nactghouls keep their special abilities and stuff, but everybody else with the infiltrate skill gets that instead. I'm not so sure about this. I like it in theory, and I think certain scenarios are broken by infiltrate, but with an arbitrator's expertise and players being, you know, level-headed and cool about things, you could do this for some scenarios, but I would say that infiltrate is not necessarily a problem in all sort of types of campaigns at all types of boards and scenarios. So it's really worth considering the types of scenarios and fighters that you're using infiltrate on. Again, corpse grinders have a problem with mass infiltrate, and I would say that would be a good alternative. I think the infiltrate on the corpse grinders is what makes them slightly broken. So maybe just implementing that for your corpse grinder initiates would be a thing. I could see that happening, but I think it's a bit harsh to say that infiltrate flatly just does that and doesn't do what infiltrate is supposed to do. But let me know in the comments what you think about that. I think it's a bit too far, but I think it could be used in certain scenarios and whatnot. Okay, this is a nice one as well, and I have to say I kind of agree with it. We've got ISO Eluka on Reddit as well, who comes up with no skill or gene smithing or upgrade duplicates on gangs at creation. Now, I quite like this, I have to say. Now, this is specifically on gang creation, so no dermal hardening spam on Goliaths is definitely a good thing. No nerves of steel spam also on Goliaths is definitely a good thing as well. I'm good with this. I think this is actually a nice idea. Nothing is to stop you gaining those skills later on in a campaign, but with the way that XP works in Necromunda, it's quite hard to get new skills anyway. Most of the time you're going to go for stat upgrades on your leaders and champions anyway, and specialists too. I like this one. I think this is definitely something I'll consider using. Usually I take the softer approach and just try and sort of like get my players not to be silly, not to metagame too much, as well as myself. I like to limit myself to certain things. I have actually currently got a gang in Necromunda that does have 2 instances of the same skill at gang creation, but they're not one of the OP skills. It really was to go with the fluff and stuff. So it depends on the skill. If it's a subpar skill, duplicates maybe, but if it's one of the power skills like Spring Up, Nerves of Steel, Infiltrate, things like that, then perhaps limiting them to just one a gang creation is a good idea. In the same thread, also, we've got bottling out voluntarily is an auto loss. I've included this in all of my campaigns. It should be a given, really. Again, though, it really does depend on the scenario, but I would say once you've achieved an objective and you bottle out, that can be a little bit of a bone of contention, I suppose. But I would say, generally speaking, voluntarily bottling out is a loss and your opponent should win. If you turn up and your opponent has only played one turn of the game and they win it and you get nothing out of the game, then I would say that's pretty unfair and that shouldn't be the way that it is. So absolutely, bottling out voluntarily should be a loss in most cases. Also, no more than 1 injury roll at any point. So if a fighter goes out of action, it is just 1 serious injury roll and that's it. Absolutely. I think most people actually do this. If you don't do this, I think it's pretty harsh and you tend to lose fighters to more memorable deaths and stuff as a result. But yeah, corpse grinders with sever and stuff, this can be really nasty if the injury starts stacking. I would always suggest that to take the edge off that a little bit, we only do 1 injury roll. I think that's a given, really. Most people seem to do this, I think. This is one that I haven't thought of actually, and this involves Blaze. Of course, Blaze isn't inherently broken, but it can be very, very disruptive half of the time when stuff is set on fire on a 4+. This is a nice suggestion. Blaze recovery roll at the end of the round as opposed to at the end of your fighter's activation. This allows you to run someone over to assist like you can with seriously injured fighters. I really like this actually, and I think I'm going to implement this in my campaign, so well done for that one. Custom loot casket generator is suggested here as well. This is quite interesting, much more varied loot and can make finding loot much more exciting as well. The generic loot caskets, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're just not much fun and often they don't really incentivize you to want to actually open them or go and get them. So maybe having different items with different rarities in them and randomly generating those items is a really nice thing to do as well. Makes it a little bit sort of Hero Quest really, and I quite like that. So this is definitely something I will think about as well. The next one is bounties, and something that I've used on and off in my campaigns. When I try not to make things too complex, I'll leave it out, but bounties are a really good way of doing things. If you like, you can go and check Goonhammer's bounty suggestion actually, and it's really, really good. I've used this on numerous occasions, and you can place bounties on gangs or on certain fighters that are just out of control in campaigns. It's a nice way to balance things. If there's a fighter who is just absolutely killing everybody in every game, then absolutely slap on a bounty so that when someone takes that fighter out of action, they get a little bit of a reward for it as well. This is a nice way of doing things. I think bounties feel very thematic and are definitely belonging in Necromunda. Limitations on special/heavy weapons as well at gang creation and during a campaign. I agree with this. I like the way it was in old Necromunda in 95 with special weapons and heavy weapons. You only ever had heavies really, and leaders having special weapons or heavy weapons, I believe. And this is quite a nice thing as well. I do feel like the sort of paramilitary feel of the new Necromunda is a bit of a step away from where my heart is with Necromunda, if I'm honest. And I do prefer having more auto guns, las guns, shotguns, and more basic sort of like simple weapons in Necromunda, as opposed to a bunch of guys with just plasma guns and heavy bolters and things like that. So a limit on heavy weapons and special weapons I think is a good idea. Maybe 2 per gang, and maybe not the same special weapon or heavy weapon as well. So duplicates, banning that I think is quite a nice thing as well. A Corpse Grinder one here, and this is about the Corpse Grinder masks. In this one, the suggestion from Sean Eyre is to say that they only work in a 90-degree sort of front arc, which I think really makes a lot of sense. Using the willpower checks on a Corpse Grinder that's on the ground or from behind them and stuff doesn't feel right anyway, because they're not actually looking at you. I think if you can draw that 90-degree line of sight to the Corpse Grinder's front arc, then absolutely the willpower check still needs to be a thing. But honestly, I quite like this, and I can see lots of people already doing this as well. We certainly do that in my campaigns as well. The Corpse Grinder masks should only work from the front, in the same way as furnace plates or plate mail work as well, really. Ben Peel over on Facebook suggests no tactics cards. Now, I fully disagree with this. I think tactics cards bring a lot of flavour to Necromunda. However, there are certain tactics cards that I would omit. History of Violence, Dangerous Footing are the 2 main ones that come to mind here. But having no tactics cards I think is a bit harsh. You could perhaps limit the use of tactics cards. And I do know there are several people out there, lots of people in fact, that don't use tactics cards, and that's absolutely fine. I do feel that they do give you a little bit more flavour though, and a bit more tactical depth to your games of Necromunda. So I would suggest not getting rid of them entirely. However, just consider those really powerful ones and limit them where possible. Let's hop over to my email now. Thank you for sending all these emails in. We've got one from Joseph here who says, my local group couldn't find a rule that stopped you from firing into melee with template weapons, flamers, web guns, etc., and only hitting the one fighter that you're targeting. There isn't a rule for it, but I think, again, common sense prevails here. If you're going to fire a template into close combat, you absolutely hit both of them automatically. There's no rolling for it. There's no stray shots or anything in my book. If you're going to web 2 guys that are in close combat, one of them's yours, one of them's the enemy, then absolutely you're going to be hitting both of those fighters, and that should be a given, really. The next email was from Dominic, so thank you for this one. Some really good stuff in here. I'm just going to pick a couple out. The first one is we're increasing the number of damage dice for vehicles when shooting with heavy weapons. Currently, it's more profitable to shoot at a vehicle with a heavy stubber than with a multi-melter, because each hit is an additional damage die. More damage does not mean more dice. We just choose the best one. That's what we've changed. The amount of damage means the number of damage dice that you apply. I really like this. There's actually a valid point as well. Rapid fire weapons seem to have more impact on vehicles, even if they're low strength and damage, than say something like a multi-melter. And really, it should be the other way around. A multi-melter is designed to put a hole in a tank, and a heavy stubber is not. Also, he mentioned grenades and throwing them down from a height. I think I agree with this one as well. Nowhere in the rules does it say what happens. It looks like the grenade explodes in the air after traveling, for example. So if you're throwing a grenade 9 inches, but there's a 12-inch gap, what he's saying here is that we feel like it should go all the way down to the bottom to represent the sort of gravity taking effect as well. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I feel like should it scatter from the 9 inches that you can throw it or whatever? I'm not really sure how I feel about this, but I like the idea of it. It's quite frustrating to throw grenades off the top of a building and have them just sort of automatically scatter and not hit stuff. So maybe you've got a point here. Maybe they just hit the ground or something nearest if you score that hit roll or something. I don't know. I'm waffling with this one a little bit, but I like where you're going with grenades and throwing them downwards, that's for sure. Got an email from Tom here. Ignore the cool test required when someone is wounded near you. That's an interesting one. I like the fluff and thematicness of it, but it does require a little bit more just time and dice rolling and stuff. And I guess it is a bit harsh when someone's taken out and 2 or 3 hive scum next to them just chip and are broken immediately. That can be a little bit harsh, but I do like it. I do quite like it, honestly. It's quite fluffy, and it just means that really you have to think about not having your guys all bunched up, maybe. I think that's the way around this one, honestly, Tom. The other one that you've got here is access to the trading post up to and including rare 8 at gang creation. I like this, and I do a similar version of this. I'm not sure about rare 8 at gang creation, but that said, rare 8 items aren't particularly OP. I would say just common items, honestly, and just giving every gang access to common items as part of their house list, I think is a really nice thing to do as well, because it's a bit weird when you get a house list that doesn't even include an axe or something like that on it. So I think Cawdor had that problem. I wanted to have Cawdor bone pickers with axes or something like that. Oh, they do have axes, but the Zealot doesn't get access to an axe. So I gave my Zealot 2 axes because I modeled it that way. I just thought it was cool. So yeah, I think adding in the fact that you can get some sort of rarity from the trading post, whether it's up to 8 or not, or just common items, I think is a good idea. So as you can see, those are just some of the vast amount of house rules that players are using in their groups, whether they're in the USA or the UK or they're in Spain or wherever. This will differ depending on the meta and stuff where you play, but generally speaking, Necromunda is an awesome, rich, deep game with a lot of granular nitty-gritty to it. However, there are a lot of ambiguous rules, and the way things are worded often does require arbitrators to house rule things. So those are just a selection of some of the ones that were submitted by the Necromunda community. So thanks again for that. And I will no doubt do another one of these in the future as well. If you like this video, please do like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon as well, and I'll be back real soon. Peace out.